Here we go. Doug, please call the roll.
Commissioner Alvarado. Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Dunn. Commissioner Arp. Commissioner Gilmetti. Commissioner Guardino. Commissioner Kehoe. Commissioner Tavaloni. Commissioner Medaffer. Commissioner Van Konynenberg. Senator Bell. Assemblymember Frazier. Chair Inman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we're going to move to item number 2, welcome to the region. And I think Kenneth is going to do the first word of welcome.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. Good afternoon. And on behalf of my executive director, Steve Heminger, who is regretful that he cannot be here today, we would like to welcome you to San Francisco and to our headquarters here at the Bay Area Metro Center. And it is my distinct honor to introduce my commission chair, Jake McKenzie of Rohnert Park, to introduce. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Wonderland. The Bay Area Metro Center. This is our now relatively new home, and we're very delighted to have the California Transportation Commission in all its executive glory here in our building. It's unusual for me to be welcoming you in the sense that I just welcomed you to Sonoma County, or helped to welcome you to Sonoma County, which was a grand expedition that you had up to Santa Rosa, and I enjoyed getting to, as the Scots would say, getting acquaint with some of your membership. And I snuck into the lunchroom before this meeting, and I had a chance to get acquaint with some other members of the commission, particularly since they didn't know I was in the lunchroom. I was quiet as a wee mouse. But fortunately, I didn't record any of you on my iPhone. So you're safe. Anyway, I do have talking points. I promised staff that I would try to follow them with some degree of accuracy. I'm not renowned for doing that, as people who heard me speak at the opening of the Salesforce Transit Center last Friday know. But welcome indeed. I am the chair of MTC. I am a city council member in the city of Rohnert Park. And this is a time of change, not just a change of our being in Oakland to being over here, but actually from an organizational point of view, a very significant change that will be taking place over the next number of months. Just last month, Steve Heminger, our executive director of 18 years, announced his plans to retire on February the 28th, 2019. And so in the last 8 months of my chairing MTC, I'm faced with the task of working with my fellow commissioners and staff to replace what my dear friend Senator McGuire from up in Healdsburg would say, I give you Steve Heminger, a legend in his time. I don't do a very good McGuire accent, but I'll leave that to others. But it is something that I do want to remark upon in front of you, because I know you have worked with Steve over the past 2 decades and more than 2 decades, because he was very active as a chief deputy before that under Larry Doms. So in any event, it's obviously going to be a time of change. And at the same time, as you are aware, a year ago we amalgamated the staffs of MTC and the Association of Bay Area Governments, the COG. So we have an amalgamated staff. We have 2 separate boards. And so Steve, maybe the fact that he had to be the executive director of 2 separate boards drove him to retirement. I don't know. Only he knows that for sure. But in any event, any thoughts you might have, you're always welcome to give me a call, and I'll be happy to entertain any names that you might want to be putting forward. So we do have a good working relationship. with the state, represented by you, but also I believe I saw Jim Davis lurking around somewhere. Where are you? There he is, District 4 Acting Director, a fellow commissioner on MTC, and it's been a great pleasure to have you sitting by my side up there from time to time, Jim. So thank you. But this is the way we work together. We work together with you all. We work together with Caltrans. Obviously, as elected officials in the 9 Bay Area counties, we try to play well together amongst ourselves as the MTC Commission. And given the challenges that face us in the Bay Area, some of you are intimately involved in them. Some of you have been preached to about them many a time, and that is the relationship of jobs, transportation, and housing, and where we find ourselves in this amazing state. Is it the 5th largest economy in the world? And in the Bay Area, which by some accounts, the 18th largest economy in the world. And we find ourselves in this immense prosperity, and at the same time, the dichotomy is that on the other hand, and the paradox is that it has become less and less affordable to the people whom we depend upon to get the work done, to keep the economy moving, to get them from place to place, to have a roof over their head. So these indeed are challenging times. The partnership we've had with you has been proven time and time again, and I particularly want to thank you for including projects from the STIP, the TCRP, Prop 1B, and now Senate Bill 1, where magically a slide will appear. There we go. Local road funds at risk. The increase in annual local road funds by about 75%. Over 10 years, this lost funding would increase backlog of road maintenance by $3.9 billion and cause pavement condition to deteriorate. So this is very important. I'm particularly proud of being involved in helping getting this measure passed. We know that our legislators, and I would have hoped, just to thank them once again, that Fraser and Bell would both have been here. They're not, so in absentia, we thank them and their fellow legislators for getting a bill to the governor, getting it signed, and getting us well on our way. We have various programs, but one particular one in terms of multimodality is important to us. And we have one of these, and this is near and dear to my heart. I'm a member of the SMART Board of Directors, as some of you know. We're celebrating this Saturday the first anniversary of providing passenger rail service in Marin and Sonoma County. The connection with US 101, the Marin-Sonoma Narrows, a parallel bike pedestrian path, the changes that has started to bring about in Marin and Sonoma counties in the 101 corridor is already obvious, but we're not there yet. There's lots of work to be done, and the inclusion of that program, because Caltrans is involved as well, that is one of the projects selected to be funded through the SCC program. So thank you to you guys for recognizing that and moving us forward. And this is the next slide to come up, and I go like that, and the Proposition 6 slide, Bay Area projects at risk from Proposition 6. I won't state the obvious. The obvious is that throughout the Bay Area region, we see project after project at risk if, in fact, Proposition 6 is passed. We have taken, as MTC, an opposed position. That would come as no surprise to you. But also, myself and others have volunteered as elected officials to be part of the campaign to defeat that proposition. And in fact, I'll have my first gig tomorrow up in Santa Rosa. The Santa Rosa Taxpayers Association, as you might anticipate, is eagerly proposing that Proposition 6 pass, and I am going to be equally adamant in opposing the passage of that proposition with its negative effects. Because this is a huge boost in transportation funding, but there's no point in me preaching to you on this topic, but there is a point in mentioning Regional Measure 3 because these are bookends as far as the Bay Area transportation is concerned. That Regional Measure 3, 35 high-priority projects, revenue from a toll increase phased in over the next 6 years, starting to be collected in January 1st. I think in terms of full transparency, we have been sued by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, as has the state legislature. In terms of Regional Measure 3, we obviously are not going to be taking this lying down, but in the meantime, we move forward. There are no injunctions against our moving forward with the process, and MTC will in September start to do the process work necessary to certify the election and to move forward. So I'm here to tell you that. And then I've got to remember at the very end, enjoy our new building, tour the just opened Salesforce Transit Center, which is a very interesting piece of architecture. It's not many bus rail termini where you can climb up onto the top story and walk around a 5-acre park with magnificent vegetation, great lawn areas, and you're in San Francisco, so you're going to have fun. The weather's gorgeous. The restaurants are fabulous. The natives are reasonably friendly. And so thank you all for your service. And on behalf of the commission, on behalf of our staff, and behalf of Steve Heminger, who is enjoying his vacation up in Eastern Oregon, I bid you all welcome, and it's great to see you all here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jake. And we have appreciated you loaning us your gorgeous facility for our tri-state commission meetings we've just had yesterday and this morning. So thank you very much. It's been great to be here. So with that, we'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes. I have a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, a second by Commissioner Van Konynenberg. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 4, approval of minutes from the joint meeting between the California Transportation Commission and the Air Resources Board.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 5, Commissioner meetings for compensation.
I move we be compensated. For what it's worth.
Well, I think Commissioner Alvarado made that motion, but it was strongly seconded by Commissioner Arp, so there we go. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 6, Commission Executive Director Susan Branson.
Commissioners, under my report, not too much, just wanted to acknowledge the Oregon and Washington Transportation Commissions coming here to California and meeting with the California Transportation Commission over yesterday and today. It was a great meeting focused on technology, and we do look forward to our next meeting in about a year from now in ideally Washington, maybe Oregon, so we'll work that out. But just wanted to take a moment to, I know that Garth was thanked during that tri-state meeting, but just wanted to acknowledge the efforts of Garth Hopkins and Doug Remedios in planning and coordinating that meeting. Yeah, thanks. And Commissioners, just as a reminder, we do have the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee meeting that will be held on September 7th. It will be held in the Los Angeles County MTA LA Metro's facility. Just want to thank LA Metro for making that facility available. And at that meeting, Garth will actually provide more detail, but the TAC will be convening to talk about recommendations that they may want to make to the commission to consider. Also, as you're aware, since our last commission meeting, the commission did hold a joint meeting with the California Air Resources Board, and the meeting was very successful. We are, as staff, working forward on the next meeting, and just as a reminder, it'll be held December 4th in LA. Again, I want to thank LA Metro. They've made their facility available, which is wonderful, and we're very appreciative. We also are planning the September 19th, 20th town hall meeting in the city of Gonzales, and TAMC and AMBAG and others have been greatly, we just greatly appreciate their efforts in putting this town hall meeting together. And it will focus on transportation issues along the Central Coast, particularly in Monterey County. It will focus on freight as well. And then, last but not least, very important, this is Stephen Mahler's last commission meeting formally to be here. And I am not going to pull him up today because he's promised he will come back. He will still be, a state employee until the spring. But want to just let everyone know that we will be planning a party for him, a great celebration. And, on a bridge? Maybe on a bridge, I don't know. But Stephen does have over 40 years of state service. And this is a hard one for not only the commission, the staff, but all of those people out there that he's worked with over the years at Caltrans and regional agencies. And I just really, Stephen is a remarkable person, as we all know. And I just have so much respect for Stephen, his dedication, his ability to solve any problem, no matter what it is, how difficult, his courage, his willingness to take risks, his kindness. Maybe some don't see that, but he's just an all-around good person. And with that, I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that. So we are seeking his replacement. And with that, commissioners, that concludes my report.
I'm glad you didn't mention his driving skills.
Well, Stephen, on behalf of all of the commission, we too want to add our thank you. And I know we have you tomorrow, so we'll get another chance. And I had a solution of moving an agenda item off till maybe 2023, and then Stephen would have to hang around a little longer. So, but anyway, thank you. In all seriousness, we do totally appreciate your dedication. And for those of you,
Thank you for your kind words. They're probably not deserved.
but Stephen represents a family of service. So those of you who might not know, his parents actually were part of our transportation family for their careers. So thank you, Stephen, for the legacy. Okay, commissioner reports, my fellow commissioners. Anybody? No? Whoa. This isn't like us to be quiet, so. Because we've already been talked out with, yeah. Hopefully you all joined us at that tri-state commissions, because we all learned a lot, so it's great. Okay. It says Secretary Annis, but I'm kind of thinking that maybe this is Christine and not Brian, so Christine.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chair Inman. Today, there are proposed allocations for over $2 billion in highway projects and over $156 million in mass transportation projects, many of them due to SB 1. These projects will repair pavement and bridges, begin significant congestion relief, and bring forward transformative transportation projects. It's a huge number of projects moving forward, with some of them going to construction. These accomplishments show the great work of the CTC, Caltrans, and our transportation partners that benefit our transportation systems, economy, environment, and our communities. We're really excited to see the progress that our TIRCP grant recipients are making to advance the projects that were awarded. Between the August meeting and the October meeting, you should see most of our project partners request funding for at least the early phases of their project. So we're really excited to see that. And on a separate note, I want to applaud the incredible job that Caltrans has done in the past few weeks to assist with the fires in Northern and Southern California. They quickly got emergency work underway repairing the roads and guardrails and removing debris to open the roads after the fires. A number of employees were directly affected by the fires, many were evacuated, and some even lost their homes. Their dedication and service are truly remarkable. So I want to recognize Director Berman and all the Caltrans employees who helped and express my appreciation for all that they've done. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Oops, thank you, Christine. Any questions, comments? We too want to add our thanks to all of our first responders and our transportation partners. It just seems like this endless fire season is just so relentless. It's hard for all of us. And I was thinking back to our Sonoma trip and how meaningful it was for all of us to visit the Santa Rosa sites. And now we just look at that long list and think it's just an ongoing list. So whatever we can collectively do together is better, but thank you. Okay, Director Berman, Caltrans.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start my report, as I always do, with pull out your scorecards because we've got some new players. So since our last meeting, Carrie Bowen, District Director in District 7, has retired. You all know Carrie. She did a great job for us at several different parts of the department, but most recently as the District Director, and she did a wonderful job establishing better partnerships with our local partners and doing a really good job working internally as well, and we miss her. While I have the ad out for that position, Shirley Choate, who was the Chief Deputy District Director, is now the Acting District Director. Also, I have appointed a new District 11 Director in San Diego, Corey Binns. Corey's been with the department, I think, for over 20 years. He was most recently my Chief Deputy District Director, and I'm very excited for what he's already jumped in and started doing. Let's move over to District 12. We have a new Acting District Director in District 12, Jerry DeSantos, and Jerry has also dived right in and is getting a lot done in District 12. And now in District 4, Jim Davis, who's been doing a great job as the Acting District Director, and I know that because I hear from a lot of you. Jim's last day is Monday, I guess. He's going to be covering this over the weekend, and I'm happy to announce Tony Tavares is the new District 4 Director, and Tony's here with us today. Tony has been our maintenance division chief for the state for the last 8 years, I believe, and has done a fabulous job and in fact, I delayed having Tony's start date because he's been so involved with managing our response to all the fires. But we are going to have to let him start here in District 4 on Monday. You may recall Tony also, he was for a while our division chief for right-of-way. He's also previously been the interim District 10 Director. So he's got a wealth of experience and a lot of enthusiasm for his new job. And so we'll be hearing more from Tony. As was mentioned, we've been very busy with the wildfires, and I won't go into too much detail, but I will tell you that we've had Caltrans personnel working around the clock, staffing closures, repairing guardrail, removing dead trees and debris, and completing erosion control. And I know that some of the districts are already looking at, as a result of the fires, what are we going to do because the rains are going to be coming, and so we're doing a lot of slope stabilization in anticipation of the next round of extreme weather events. let's see, by August 1st, we had road closures due to wildfires in 5 of our 12 districts, and routes were affected in 7 counties. We currently have 5 directors' orders in place with a total of just under 50 million, and I'm sure that number will grow. I want to just tell you a little bit about, I went to District 2 to Reading a couple weeks ago to see how that was coming along. We had 12 or 13 employees who lost their homes, several who were evacuated. We lost power in the district office where our TMC is also, so our dispatchers were not able to use our usual traffic management center. And I think I saw Dave out there, Dave Moore, our District 2 director, and I really want to applaud Dave for his leadership at a time when all of our usual resources were just not available. And I was so impressed when I went there and really inspired to see that the staff all stepped up and figured out what to do to keep things running. It was very, very inspiring. And so a lot of folks who had lost their homes still showed up for work because that's where they were needed. So very proud to be leading that team. On a more somber note, I'm sorry to report that in the last couple of months, we've had 3 contractor employee fatalities. As a result, I had a safety stand down statewide for our construction field offices last Wednesday. And moving ahead, I've asked that our construction industry work with our construction folks and our maintenance folks to develop a one-day meeting for worker safety best practices. I think we're all doing a good job individually, but we need to talk to each other a little more and see what we can do to prevent further tragedies. We are also, last month, went to the reopening of Highway 1 at Mud Creek, and you're going to hear more from Tim Gubbins about that. I think he's going to present something. And then it's fitting that we're in San Francisco. A couple weeks ago, I was in San Francisco for the ribbon cutting of one of the navigation centers. And Caltrans is, around the state, we are partnering with cities, counties, and NGOs to look at new ways to address challenges to the state and our locals, the issue of homeless camps in our right-of-way. And the city of San Francisco worked with us, and we were able to provide them a lease agreement for 2 navigation centers, one at 3rd and Van Ness and one at 5th and Bryant. I went to the ribbon cutting at 3rd and Van Ness. And what the city has done is these are different than typical shelters. They have fewer barriers to entry, and they have a lot of intensive case management. People can come in with their partners, their possessions, their pets, and the purpose of the Navigation Center is to get them off the streets and help them in finding their way to different social services. So I'm really glad that Caltrans was able to be a part of that, and I really applaud the City of San Francisco for looking at a different way to manage this problem that we are dealing with statewide and is really draining a lot of our resources. And that's the end of my report.
Of course, Commissioner Keyhoe.
Thank you. Lori, you said one of the offices lost power. Will you go into a little more detail? I mean, do you have redundant power supply? Were you able to get back up and running?
So this was actually in the area where we were evacuated, and so what the folks did at the TMC, which impressed me, was, so hopefully I got this right, Dave. We didn't have access, we couldn't get to the repeater so that we could even communicate. And so the 2 folks, the women that run the TMC, they took their handheld radios, went down to Red Bluff, and were able to tie into the repeater there. And when I told them, I was so impressed that they figured out what to do. They said, well, the maintenance teams needed us. They needed our help, and we had to figure out how to manage it. So we also used a new system that we put in, I think it's called Evergreen, which is like a reverse 911 where we call employees and tell them, or text them and tell them, don't come to work, or here's, the office is closed. So I think that worked pretty well also. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Lori. Okay, we'll move on to federal highways. Vince.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Very similar to this morning. Hey, I'm not sure anybody's aware, but there's a DOT freight workshop in Chicago coming up, so it's going to be a great opportunity. Yeah, so I'm quick. I'm quick steady. Every day's a freight day. Every day's a freight day. Sorry. Couple things I want to hit. I'll go over a couple things I talked about this morning, so everybody can hear a little bit about that. Where we're at with our appropriations. The FAST Act is our authorization. The appropriation is what funds us yearly. The Senate took on a 2-year minibus that was passed by the House, and then they added 2 more, and they included transportation and agriculture. So that goes back to the House. So now it's up to the House on their next move, whether they approve that or not, on how they move on with that. Infra grants, we had 2 here in California. The deadline for Congress to take an action to say no to anything was last Friday. We heard nothing that I'm aware of. So the 2 infra grants, we'll work with them. We're waiting for our Office of the Secretary to come out with a template for an agreement, so we're going to work with an agreement with them. So we will be reaching out to both LA and Bakersfield. So congratulations. We're working with Caltrans on the eligibility for emergency relief for the fires that are going on, so we're constantly working with them on that. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of travel with Lori, and I think she could probably stand here for a couple hours just talking about what her staff is doing for people. Kind of some neat stories that, all of a sudden somebody's knocking on a driver's window because they couldn't see and couldn't get out, and it was a Caltrans employee saying, "Here, follow me." And then there's Caltrans employees just popping up everywhere to just help people. Now, there's 20,000 of them, so that's a good thing. But the fact is, they're out there doing it. And I know there's the same, I'm sure that every local maintenance staff can say the same thing. And I think that's one of the areas where in our transportation industry, we don't realize the real impact that the maintenance staff have on everything that happens. They have something happens, a crash or something like that, they're in there trying to figure something out, oil spill something, they're doing something. But when it comes to an emergency, that's where you see their salt. They just step right up and say, "I'll go help." The example you gave me about when we were talking about the 2 women with the radios, they had to get down to get them because the maintenance team needed information, and they had to do it. And they just no-brained it. Yeah, of course we have to do it. So congratulations to that staff, that team, and that industry, the maintenance side of that industry. DBE, we are 12.5% is our goal at the moment. Caltrans has sent a goal to us, and for evaluation goal methodology, we're looking at a much higher goal at 17%, over 17%. That's another area I have to applaud. When I said this morning, when I got here 10 years ago, we were right around 2%, 2.5% participation with disadvantaged businesses. And now we've just set a goal of 17%. And I was talking at a Western Division Administrator meeting, and they were, "Hey, where are you at? Where are you guys at?" And I told them they were 7 and 9 and a couple of that, and I said, "No, we're at 12.5, and we're achieving it." I don't think Lori or I would argue that 17.5 or that 14 where we're at right now is what it should look like. We're not looking for the diversity. The diversity in that number isn't there, and there's a lot of focus and a lot of help trying to go into that opportunity. And the Small Business Council that Caltrans has is a big help to that. And I know each of the districts have the same thing. So there's a lot of effort trying to go into how do we continue to make that thing move. Had an opportunity, a couple of friends of mine that actually work for the contracting industry. I was at a dinner party one evening, and one of them said, "Oh, I was at a meeting where Caltrans had suppliers and contractors who would buy some of the supplies that they were talking about together at that same meeting, talking about how do we do that." And the subs looked up at the DBEs were looking at the big contractors, and they said, "I don't trust you." So I applaud you for creating an environment for them to be able to say that. And so they're making steps forward to figure out how they can work together and what kind of outreach the big contractors need to do to try and make all this work. It's a very challenging program, but a very important one. August redistribution, we talked about that. We're waiting on that. Our biggest, I think I was, Stephen, we were at 280 million. 293 million is the most we've ever gotten here in California. Kind of hoping for more than that, don't know. But we should be hearing shortly on that. Last year, I think if I did the math right, you got more in August redistribution here in California than 11 states got in their entire program on the year. So you got that in August. So hopefully that's another big number. We're anticipating a little bit larger number. And lastly, I want to thank Caltrans and my headquarters for coming out and doing a tribal safety summit. So we're working with tribes, and we're trying to do that all over. We had some run off the road, rural run off the road opportunities that we've taken around to different areas to try and get tribes to come out and help understand and figure out what we can do to help tribes. And I'll encourage everybody behind me to continue to outreach to the tribes and make sure tribes are at the table while you all are making your decisions. Hey, freight workshop. Oh, I already hit the freight workshop, so I'm good. And again, I applaud you guys for the communication and having that tri-state workshop. I think it's a great opportunity. Any opportunity that we can, we're taking people from peer exchanges and sending them all over. And if you have opportunities here where you think that that's a good opportunity that we think, or that you think we might be able to use and go learn something from somebody else, or they can learn something here, please take advantage of that. But that was a good discussion I think you had, and for me, relationships and you're talking similar things and how you connect. So it is applauded.
Questions for Mr. Mamano?
Yay.
Well, you guys, you're gonna.
Oh, I almost had it.
Okay, Commissioner Dunn.
Darn it. Darn it. I was so close.
This will be the hard one. So one of the things we talked about at that tri-state meeting, a big, hairy, audacious goal, is before each of the 3 states go down 3 different policy paths on road use charging, that we kind of try to align and maybe present a proposal to feds to leave us alone and let us experiment. Is there a process? You don't have to talk now, but I'm would love to chat with you offline. Is there a process to make that happen, to get early approval?
First off, we never leave you alone.
I know
we're
that.
Federal government. We're here to help, and we're going to help you whether you like it or not.
Scares me to death.
So too bad we're helping you. So we could do that. Let's set up some. I'll work with you on that to try and get that opportunity to meet with our headquarters to talk about it. So a lot of this stuff and the way it works is gas tax alone is a good example of that. The feds didn't come out and start a gas tax. State did it. State did it. State did it. State did it. Then the feds took it and did that. And if you know in the FAST Act, it gives you the opportunity to look at road charge and other opportunity, not just road charge, but any other opportunity to look for alternative funding for the program. It's typically done at a local level, trying to figure out what can and can't be done. And this is a good example, I think, right now. And I think it's at a stage now where something can be learned, because it's not just the 3 on the West Coast that are doing something, but something can be learned. And I think, yes, we can talk about that. I think it's to think Federal Highway is going to come out with a policy on it. I think it would be premature. I don't think you would want us to come out with a policy on that, because I think you want to figure out what can and can't be done. So I don't anticipate us doing that, but I do anticipate us continuing trying to fund the work that people are trying to do and experiment and figure out what some opportunities are. All right. Thank you, Mary.
So for those of you that weren't with us this morning, the reason Vince has given me a bad time, the U.S. DOT is hosting an autonomous vehicle dialogue. So it does include the freight sector, but
I already told them about this, Fran. They just heard from me about it.
We'll be happy to share the info. I think day 2 focuses on the freight sector, but we had a lot of discussion about autonomous vehicles and technology the last 2 days, and I think clearly for all of us transportation folks, it's where the world is.
That's a challenge at the federal level too. Who kind of owns that? NHTSA, Federal Highway. If you look in the proving grounds that we have here, and there's 2 proving grounds with Chula Vista and Contra Costa, The actual funding, there was a grant that came to that program, but it actually came through Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, which is under DOT, all of it's under DOT, National Highway Traffic Safety, Federal Highway, Federal Motor Carrier, but we're all different agencies. So it's very interesting to see who all is playing. I was very surprised that Motor Carrier Safety had it, but that's autonomous connected vehicles in the freight area. So there's a lot of opportunity in many of the different agencies, and we're working with trying to, run a thread through all of it to try and coordinate that. I know Federal Highway, that's important to us to make sure we can keep it as clear to you all as we can.
Great. Okay, thanks, Vince. We will move on now. Regional agencies, Luke?
Good afternoon, Chair Inman, Commissioners. I'm Luke McNeil-Caird. I'm with the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and I'm the RTPA moderator for this year, 2018-2019. Philip Chu from San Bernardino County Transportation Authority is the vice moderator for this year. So I first want to start off and say that our thoughts are with the affected communities by the recent wildfires, and we really appreciate CTC staff. They extended the ATP, the Active Transportation Program, application deadline for those that are affected by the wildfires. And I know a lot of our rural areas, even the urban areas, appreciated that extension. A little bit of information on Cycle 1 Active Transportation Program. We got some preliminary information from Caltrans, and from Cycle 1 there were 275 projects, and almost all of those have been allocated. And of those projects, there were 500 phases that included environmental, design, right-of-way, and construction. And 70% of those phases were delivered on time. So we are looking forward to Cycle 4 and having 4 years of programming so that we can continue to improve delivery in this important program. Bill Higgins from CalCog joined us at our RTPA meeting yesterday, and we had a good discussion about providing education on what the world of transportation funding looks like now and what it's going to look like if we lose any new transportation funding. We talked about some of the recent regional economic reports that have been released, and our regional agencies are focused on providing this information to the public and our local agencies. We also heard good news that 538 cities and counties submitted their project lists for the Local Streets and Roads program. And that's also great information that our regional agencies will be able to share on the need for transportation funding. Last but not least, we did recognize our outgoing RTPA moderator, Patricia Chen from LA Metro. She had great leadership through implementation of several new transportation program guidelines, as well as coordinating with Caltrans on the very successful project delivery workshop in May. And if I may give Patricia a round of applause. She was a great mentor to me as vice moderator also. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have questions for Luke? Hearing none. Thank you, and thank you, Patricia, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to rural counties. Maura.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mara Toomey, Chair of the Rural Counties Task Force. The rural counties met on July 13th and discussed the following issues and concerns. In regard to the comprehensive multimodal corridor planning guidance, the rural counties appreciate the Commission's consideration of their concerns regarding the inherent differences between urban and rural corridors and the efforts of Commission staff to develop flexible guidelines in an open and transparent manner. In regard to the Local Streets and Roads Funding Program reporting guidelines, the rural counties support staff recommendation to adopt the proposed guidelines. And finally, the rural counties would like to thank the Commission for extending the ATP deadline for those agencies affected by the recent wildfires. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Maura?
Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. Okay, self-help. Sarkis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. 3 items. Self-Help Counties Coalition will be hosting our next meeting on August 28th, and at that meeting we'll be talking about our events for the upcoming year. The second item was that we successfully partnered with Caltrans on reforming the indirect cost rate proposal for self-help counties. That was included as part of the state budget, so thank you to Caltrans for partnering with us on that. And then the final item is the Focus on the Future conference this year will be held in Indian Wells, October 28th to the 30th, and so we hope everyone can join us at the conference. That concludes my report.
Commissioner Arp, you gonna, okay.
Yeah, I think we should encourage self-help in rural counties to shorten their reports sometime.
I'll take that back to Keith Dunn.
Be nice to our partners now. Let's go. Thank you, Sarkis. So, okay, item 14. Garth, I think you're going to lead off innovations.
Yes, Chair. Today for our tab 14 is our innovations in transportation piece, and we're fortunate to have Caltrans Director Tim Gubbins from Caltrans District 5 in the Central Coast to talk about the Mud Creek issue. Tim?
Which one is that? Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. As I said, my name is Tim Gubbins. I'm here to talk to you a little about Mud Creek, show you some of the challenges that we faced out there, and some of the innovations we were able to employ in order to reopen the roadway. So, as you can see from the photos, there was quite a difference in overnight one night. In May 20th, 2017, a massive landslide occurred with over 5 million cubic yards of material transferring downslope. So as you can see from the pictures, the image on the left was taken before the slide. This is just some of our nice Google aerials. And afterwards, that's a couple weeks after the slide occurred. And so there was over 15 acres of new California land and 2,400 feet of new shoreline was created with this. And so I'm not going to read all the quantities there, but the Mud Creek project location had been experiencing smaller landslides earlier in the winter of 2017. You may recall me here about a year ago talking about the Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge, which is about 40 miles north of this. But in this area, we had Paul Slide, some others, and there was a total of about 5 landslides that kind of came together in the Mud Creek Basin. So we brought actually a small business. John Madonna Construction was brought on board to help with Paul Slide, and as part of that, they were also doing down at Mud Creek. We had some small material flow, so they were keeping the road open there. And as the contractor was doing that small cleanup work, material was coming down. Every morning he'd have to clear it up, and we'd open it for the day, close it at night, so for traffic not to hit rocks or anything that they couldn't see in the dark. One Thursday, and I'm going to repeat this little story because I can't help but give this superintendent credit. One of the contractor's superintendent said, we can't work Friday. That slope looks like it's changing. And so he was firm enough that he convinced us not to work Friday. On Saturday, May 20th, the slide happened. Because we had heard that, we gated off, we closed the road. There were no injuries, no safety issues with any of our workers, any of the residents or traveling public. So, as I was talking to our favorite FHWA division administrator, it takes a lot to have that awareness and that knowledge, but it takes even more to be able to stand up to us and tell us that he's not going to open the road. So that was the old school way of doing it. Just something doesn't look right. So together with our private and public partners, we set out to plan and reconstruct this stretch of highway. And as with any project, as I said, the safety of the workers, those of our contractors, as well as the traveling public, they're all paramount. And so we monitored the geologic activity in and around the landslide. We used radar. We got this from a consultant. This is technology typically used in open pit mining, where we use it to scan the slopes in and around the mudslides. So this happens every few minutes, 24 hours a day, a scan would happen. When there was any movement, we'd start seeing it. If it was accelerated movement, we'd see it in red or black, or we'd, just like the Google Maps traffic, we'd be able to tell where things were happening on the slope by bringing these things in and having these down at the bottom. Other things we did in order to provide for safety of workers. We had the ground-based radar that I just talked about. We then worked on what is the evacuation protocol for field personnel, for all the big equipment we had out there. We wanted to make sure that people knew how to get out and what to listen for. Radio communication, we had our radio communication so that everyone would be able to get this. This is not a real accessible area for cell phones. We brought some radar installation and some radio repeaters so that we could have communication across the site. When the fall still happened, you couldn't see around the curve. So we need to make sure we had good communication out there. Temporary rockfall protection, just to give you a scale, we have 16 shipping containers weighted down with temporary rail inside. Those were installed. You can imagine the effort to do that. That was just a temporary rockfall. This slide was 1,200 feet tall. So this was the type of things we had. This was strategically done to prevent errant rocks and debris from injuring the workers or any of the equipment or public that was down below. And then spotters for the equipment. We had spotters doing the real-time visual scanning. They were down below and they were up above just watching. And so we could give awareness and we could watch what was happening on the slopes. So with the safety protocol established, we started analyzing the magnitude of landslide in order to develop the ultimate strategy. We were lucky we were able to partner with USGS. They provided aerial LiDAR data on a regular basis. And that helped us analyze all the changes in the landslide by comparing different surfaces developed. For any of you who's not familiar, LiDAR is the light detection and ranging. Kind of like sonar uses sound, LiDAR uses light and lasers. And so that's the technology that we brought on.
Quick question.
Yes.
Can you just give us a 30-second lesson on what does the scale mean, the red and the purple and the yellow?
The purple means there's some movement there. The yellow and purple kind of mean where the purple is, it had already moved and it was still just kind of settling in. So that was the main landslide that had fallen down. It was kind of settling in. The red is where there was still active movement. Certainly. And so our geotech engineers with the department used equipment like extremometers and slope inclinometers. Excuse me today. So we were quantifying and measuring the movement both on the surface and subsurface. The data was combined with field observation conducted on foot by our engineering geologists. They were hiking at the top of the slide nearly daily. And so the surveyors with the department, we first started using our traditional surveying equipment to try and map the slide and monitor key points. And then we were able to use an automated system using solar power. And so the automated system, we put some prisms up there at key points. And so then the automated system, again, kept track of that, where the movement and settling happened. And all this data provided us with the information we need to make calculated decisions on how much work we need to do and where to actually put it. So our strategy to reopen was guided in part by our past history, what we've learned out there before. Big Sur area, there's been several different landslides over the years. It's about a 70-mile long stretch of roadway. 1983 had been the previous largest slide ever known, and it was 2 million cubic yards. And that had closed the highway for about a year and a half. So we knew this one, being more than double that size, we were in for some quite some challenges. After the 1980s, we had actually worked with the whole area, the whole statewide, and then the community, come up with, in the Big Sur, a coast highway management plan, and that guided what actions we would take. We had agreement with everyone what our approach would be, how we'd communicate. And so at Mud Creek, we used the technology that we were getting on the site that I talked, also the techniques that we had already talked about with this coast highway management plan. And we decided we could realign the highway over the main body of the slide. This was a lot cheaper than trying to realign the highway inland in this area. You can see from the picture what the slopes are like there. It was cheaper and faster than trying to get a tunnel made, a lot more sustainable too. So, moving on. So after we got our geotech drilling, we confirmed the stability of the main body of the slide that had come down. It stayed fairly intact. The erosion of the toe, however, the toe of the slide was quickly eating away. As we decided to realign out towards the ocean decided to take some of the land back from us. So that where the intertidal rocky coastline is, it's also a critical habitat for black abalone. And too much sediment in there can have detrimental effects on their whole population. So with a lot of these influences, we decided to build a protective rock revetment barrier. And it reduced the amount of sediment that was entering the areas, but it also gave us a nice solid base that we could start working from. A revetment, it's a semi-flexible rock barrier, was critical to ensuring we could build the embankments. These pictures just show some of the power of the ocean down on the slide. So we brought in rocks up to about 8 tons each. We hauled them to the job site and placed to secure the position for a 2,000 foot long revetment. And that translates to about 30,000 boulders being brought on. As you can see from the picture on the upper left, sometimes we'd fit two boulders per truckload. So these were some rather large rock. The revetment itself was 40 feet tall, 60 foot wide. So again, these photos show some of the challenges we faced. If you look at the photo on the left, you can see the wave action there. Photo on the right is from up above, shows our equipment down near those waves, trying to build back up for the embankment. We needed all that so we could protect the highway that we were rebuilding. Which moves us to our construction. So we used earthen berms, catchment, reinforced embankments, retaining walls, netting, all to protect the roadway and keep the traveling public safe. The embankments built above the revetment support the realignment alternative. We decided to realign out towards it, so we built up from the rock area towards the roadway. Fills were rather steep because we could do engineered fills there. We had fills of about 1.5 to 1 for those of you in the construction industry. That's what we built up from the whole way there. We also had a larger, more interconnected drainage system. So we had 4-foot diameter piping in there and a series of culverts to help us from all the storm runoff and the fact that the slide plane still goes another 800 feet above the roadway. You can see in this picture, well, you might not be able to see, but we labeled a lot of the things, the different embankments and culverts that we had. The other things that we tried to build in were catchments up the slope. We did some hill thicker walls, which are kind of gabion boxes that are filled with heavy material and then filled over it that helps support the walls. We did those with some catchment, and those were all done so that we could better maintain and give an area for catchment and then be able to do something with the material that came, have a way to get to it. So, again, these aerial views show some of the innovative design. The rock fall and debris will continue, we expect, for the next few years. As I mentioned, the entire slope is 900 to 1,200 feet tall that was exposed there. And so our roadway, as high as we thought it was still just about partway up. This is from the top of the slope looking down towards the road. You can see when I mentioned the Hilfiger walls, each of those two kind of oval areas are walls that are built. You can drive up on top of that, bring equipment on top of that, and the catchment area is behind those away from the road. So we still, the roadway's open, the project is not quite completed. We still expect some catchment, some cleanup to do on the slope. This is a picture from the south facing north on the slope. But with all this, with working with the community, we worked with Visit California, a lot of others, and then we finally opened the highway on July 18th at 9:45, if you can click. And some people had found out we were opening it and queued up. And so these people had been waiting a couple hours because there was a rumor we were opening at 6. But these are the first people driving through this stretch in approximately 18 months. I have another video in a moment. But we were able to open, and so 2 days after the opening, we had a ribbon cutting. So we celebrated this project opened. It was 14 months from the night of the big slide until we were able to actually have this open. You can see all the happy faces in the picture. So it was just a major achievement opening the world famous scenic highway after the severe storms. In 14 months, it went from being buried under 250 feet of soil to be fully reopened. And a lot of that is the creativity of and ingenuity of our engineers, geologists, planners, as well as our partner, the contractor, John Madonna Construction. This will be an aerial footage done by drone. District 7 was able to help us with that, and our own PIO did it. So if you can start that video, this is just. There is music too, but there's music that goes along with it, and I'll stop from humming because you won't hear me. But some of these look like they're just digitally recreated, but this is actual drone video after it was opened, just trying to help show the scale of the project. You can also see the fog that sometimes came in. It was very difficult to work on slopes when you couldn't see them. And as I mentioned, the spotters, if we couldn't see, we didn't work. Other than that, we were working all the daylight hours for the last 14 months. I do believe the contractor gave his employees Christmas off. The whole day? Not all of them. So, yeah. And I also want to make sure that I thank our Caltrans maintenance forces. You heard a little bit about them today. They work year-round to keep Highway 1 open. So during the winter, they did it. And then as the construction company was doing this up and down the coast, they were also working after the landslide. So this ended up being a $54 million project done in record time. And again, the safety record during construction was also paramount on everybody's. And so we kept that up through the construction. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great questions. Commissioner Gamatti?
Yeah, Tim, great job. I mean, really a great job. Just a question about the contractor. How helpful was the contractor in coming up with solutions?
They were very helpful. The contractor, superintendent, and foreman, I mean, they were out there 10, 12 hours a day. So we had all the high-tech stuff going, but they would then make suggestions because we said, hey, that north flank, that south flank, we need to do something there. It looks like we're going to have to lay that back a little bit. And they're like, all right, let's not approach it that way. Let's come from the south, get up above it, we'll do that. And so the interaction, our engineers and geologists were out there so often. This was very similar to a design build where we kept the design. And so the partnership, the integration of the two teams was just tremendous. So yeah, without the contractor's info, probably would have taken us a lot longer. Or having another contractor in a different way probably would not have been as successful.
Commissioner Arp?
Yeah, I'm just trying to picture where this is. I remember in a prior life, I was out here on another massive slide back in the 80s, and that was near Big Sur. Where was
yeah,
this
that was Julia Pfeiffer, or at Pfeiffer Burns State Park.
Yeah.
was that one. This is south of that, so this is maybe 10, 15 miles north of San Simeon, where Hearst Castle is.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so it was at the south end, south in the Monterey County, just a little bit above San Luis County line.
Okay, and the other one, I mean, how did the two compare from just amount of yards? Are they?
As I said, that one we estimated about 2 million yards moved. This one was over 5.
Yeah.
But
wow.
the solution for that one, because in those times it was decided to just start at the top and push it down.
I was there.
Yeah, and so they moved almost 5 million when you start count the slide and everything we did out there. It was getting close, but the actual slide material, this one was much greater.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Okay.
Question, where are those available? Or
yes, we
send
will
them to us?
definitely make sure, because we'll make sure your staff has them. If you'd like to post them, we have them posted on ours, and we'll make sure all the links are appropriate.
Yeah. I mean, to me, when I think of Tim, if you were a physician, you'd be the ER doc. 'Cause it seems like when you're here in front of us, we are responding to an emergency. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
You seem to thrive in that environment, and we're
Yes.
better off because of that. So thank you. And then I was thinking of the state of Hawaii, and you could be dealing with hot lava. So
There's worse places than to spend a year than Big Sur, but yeah.
Yeah. But
Well,
thank you
Hawaii's
so
up there.
much.
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 15, state and federal legislative matters, and I believe, sorry. I didn't see the applause button. Okay. State and federal legislative matters, Robert, please.
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, tab 15 is an action item. Staff recommends that the commission accept the staff report provided direction on legislation of interest in attachment A, adopt a position of support for AB 2006 Eggman, approve the letter of attachment in attachment B for transmittal to Assembly Member Eggman. The legislature reconvened from summer session on August 6th. The last day for each house to pass a bill is August 31st. Governor Brown has until September 30th to sign or veto bills that on his desk. Commission staff is recommending support for AB 2006, Assembly Member Eggman. This bill would expand Air Resource Board's existing program that provides funding for advanced technology vehicle van pool programs that currently limited to agricultural workers in the San Joaquin Valley. This bill would expand the program and allocate a minimum of 25% of funds to disadvantaged communities and disadvantaged and low-income communities throughout the state and allow hybrid vehicles to be part of the program. This bill would further the state's efforts in reducing congestion and roadways and gas emissions while increasing access for workers that commute to remote areas. Attached with this book item is an update on the bills in which the commission has taken a formal approval. That concludes my update.
Question?
Yes.
Um,
Can I
yes.
just say we have a motion by Commissioner von Kaneinenberg and a second by Commissioner Burke. Now for questions, Commissioner
Thank you.
Dunn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm prepared to support staff's recommendation and the motion. The one thing, though, that I would love some more information on is California has the highest poverty level in the nation, as we know, and it's not getting any better sooner. And I'm concerned that sometimes the definitions of disadvantaged communities are so constrained that we're not capturing opportunities for other vulnerable populations within our state. And I'm wondering if our staff could take a look at this. It might be something we need to consider in our annual report as a recommendation to expand this definition and not have it so narrow.
Commissioner Dunn, I appreciate that comment because it's something that as staff, we have been talking about. There's an active transportation program. As you know, the commission has a different set of definitions that we'll consider rather than the CalEnviro screen that's used for cap and trade funds. And this may be something this is something that we were thinking about also. So appreciate that, and we'll go ahead and develop something for your consideration to bring to the legislature. Maybe we need a clear definition.
Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 16, budget and allocation capacity. And
Thank you, Commissioners. Tab 16 is an information item that will be presented by Stephen Keck from the department.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Stephen Keck with Caltrans, and today I'm going to start with the usual, which is a look at allocation capacity for 2018-19. I gave you a draft allocation capacity at the last meeting. This is now the final capacity. We've made a few minor adjustments for revenue changes, minor updates, and also we've now rolled over any capacity that was not used last year into this year so that we have a second shot at using that capacity. Total allocation capacity for 2018-19 is $6.8 billion. Last year was $4.5 billion. So now we're seeing SB1 in full swing. This is a huge number. It's 50% larger than last year. So that's how big of magnitude we're looking at. It happens to not be the largest number ever. That was achieved way back when ARA and Prop 1B were roaming side by side. This is the second largest ever, however, and I anticipate in future years we will exceed even this level as we move on with these programs. It's also time for my quarterly update of G12 delegated allocations to the department. This is something I bring to the commission quarterly in my report. We also report on a detailed project by project level to your staff every month. So G12 is a process by which the department can make minor changes up or down to projects within a 10% limit, roughly. We have processed in the last 2017-18 year about 206 decreases in the shop and 164 increases in the shop for a net total savings of $162 million in shop projects. That's a significant number, and it's a little bit less than we've seen in the past because shop prices and construction prices in general are going up, but it's still significant savings. On the STIP side, we don't normally see G12 decreases, only increases because of the way the projects or the funds are allocated. But there's only been 7 of those actions for an increase of 13 million. So the total net savings of G12 projects is about $149 million. At the last commission meeting, Commissioner Gometti asked for an update on federal emergency relief projects and how much was owed to the state is the specific word that was used. I'm not going to say that the feds owe us money for these because these are, thank you. Thank you. These are what is called federally eligible for reimbursement, but there's no additional funding that comes to these projects necessarily. So first let me say that since 2010, we've had about $2.1 billion worth of emergency relief that's been recognized as federally eligible for reimbursement. And since that date, we've had about $479 million in federal reimbursement, leaving about $1.6 billion in total need. Now, in a normal year, the entire country has, or the federal highways has $100 million for the entire country for ER relief. It's not very much. We do sometimes see a supplemental appropriation from the Congress after large-scale disasters. We don't like to cross our fingers for large-scale disasters, but often you see lots of states coming together to ask for additional federal funding for emergency relief, and that's when we start to catch up on some of our backlog. In fact, in 2008-9, which was just 10 years ago, the total outstanding need was just $146 million. So we've had a lot of emergencies, especially in the last couple of years, that have increased this number significantly. But there's a potential as we move along and there's other disasters somewhere else for a change, we might see additional appropriations come to California to help fill in that gap. Vince, I promised you would stand up and clap.
I did.
Did you stand up? I heard the clapping. I didn't hear the. Oh, okay. So that's. That actually, I should mention this as well. In the quarterly report, the financial quarterly report that we put together, we're now going to show the detailed need and reimbursement for every emergency since 2010, which are the only ones that are still open. So you can see the emergency by emergency breakdown of these. I gave Commissioner Gometti a preview of that just because he was the one that asked the question. But the report itself is due to the commission at the end of August. With that, I'll end my presentation and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Thank you very much for that report. And Vince needs to step it up here a little bit. You know, we're down $1.6 billion, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No. What do you mean no?
Well, if we got 100% of the 100 million, it'd still take us a very long time. And that's if we had no more disasters ever, and the likelihood of that are slim to none. So, seriously, though, I think this is a huge issue. $1.6 billion is an awful lot of money, and our communities can't wait for us to have the money and then help put the road back together. So I don't know what we can do, and Vince, you're a good friend, and we love to give you. So we need to go to our congressional members and get a new law, huh? Well, I think, in our annual report, I think clearly pointing out, 1.6 billion of basically carry that we're doing because we've had to rise to the occasion, or we wanted to rise to the occasion. I don't know that we had to, but we do, so.
Absolutely, and I didn't mention that of the total still remaining, the 1.6 billion, almost 500 of that is not due, but is eligible for reimbursement to local agencies. So this is a combination of both state and local needs.
So we have some partners in this as well, so. Anybody else?
I would agree. I think we should put it in our annual report, so at least the legislature gets a copy of it, and they can forward it on to their congressional delegation.
And, we just had our tri-state meetings, and I don't know what the numbers would be for our colleagues from the state of Washington and Oregon, but it might be another opportunity if a law needs to change to point that out. So just an idea here. Yes, Commissioner Arp?
Well, yeah, I mean, considering the magnitude of the disaster, I think disasters we've been encountering the last couple of years, this is probably a good time to get this in front of the legislature. So I totally agree with the former commissioners talking about getting this in our annual report.
And if you look what's going on right now in the Northeast, I mean, there's a big need, clear across the country, let alone just in California.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay, item 17, Garth?
Yes, Commissioners, tab 17 is an action item, and the goal of advanced mitigation is to create a more environmentally sound and strategically placed mitigation projects by consolidating the forecasted mitigation needs of multiple planned transportation projects. Advanced mitigation holds a promise to protect natural resources at a broad regional scale while supporting the acceleration of transportation project delivery. In addition to several other state DOTs around the country, regional transportation agencies here in California, such as San Diego and Orange County, have utilized advanced mitigation on transportation projects for several years. Caltrans has also evaluated advanced mitigation for a number of years and has conducted some limited pilot projects. Caltrans received a huge boost to implement advanced mitigation when SB1 dedicated a total of $30 million annually in SHOP and STIP funds for a total of 4 years and created the advanced mitigation account. This account is intended to be self-sustaining. Caltrans staff has reviewed the Caltrans Advanced Mitigation Program Informal Draft Guidelines, which was released last June. Staff has prepared written comments on those draft guidelines and seeks approval from the Commission to transmit those comments to Caltrans for their consideration. In summary, staff's comments express the Commission's concern that the current draft guidelines are not sufficient to provide details necessary to Caltrans, resource agencies, and other stakeholders to implement an advanced mitigation program using advanced mitigation account funds. The second primary concern contained in the letter expresses concern regarding the time it has taken Caltrans to begin utilizing the advanced mitigation funds that were identified in SB1. We're fortunate to have Amy Bailey here today, the Caltrans Advanced Mitigation Program Manager, to answer any questions you may have regarding those draft guidelines. Staff recommends that you approve the Commission comments that were included in your binder as a yellow item on the Caltrans Advanced Mitigation Program and formal draft guidelines for transmittal to Caltrans. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, just a little point of clarification, Garth. I think in your comments you said Caltrans staff, and I think you were referring to our staff as.
I'm sorry. Yeah, well,
Okay.
Commission staff has
Commission
prepared
staff.
guidelines,
Okay, just
comments on the
for
draft
clarity.
guidelines.
So
Excuse
these
me.
are our comments.
Yes.
So I do have one public comment on that. Liz Donahue from the Nature Conservancy. Good afternoon, I think it's not on.
Okay, how's this?
Good.
Hi, I'm Liz O'Donohue with the Nature Conservancy. I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment on the Caltrans informal draft guidelines on the advanced mitigation program. As Garth said, SB1 included the first ever advanced mitigation program, and the Nature Conservancy was delighted that it was included in SB1. We supported that program, and we also supported and worked on SB 103, which provided follow-up policy context for the program. So the Nature Conservancy has been engaged in regional advanced mitigation planning policy, development, pilot project science and research for over 10 years in California and throughout the country. Our motivation for enabling and encouraging advanced mitigation have combined environmental and project delivery benefits to help reduce or minimize impacts to habitats and species from infrastructure projects, to drive compensatory mitigation investments to support conservation priorities, to minimize environmental risk, and to increase project delivery efficiencies for infrastructure agencies. There have been a number of programs throughout the state that have shown these dual benefits, including ones in Orange County, in San Diego County, and other counties. And we've been working to advocate for this to go statewide. So with that background, I want to offer a few comments. First, Caltrans should be inclusive and effectively involve other transportation agencies, the conservation community, the mitigation sector, and other stakeholders in the program in order to fully reflect the breadth and depth of mitigation demand, unleash mitigation supply opportunities, share costs, and ensure that the program's actions support regional conservation priorities, and also be consistent with legislative intent. But currently, the guidelines really focus just on Caltrans and district priorities. So we recommend that Caltrans meaningfully engage other transportation agencies throughout the state in mitigation planning, collaboration, coordination, and funding. Through partnerships with other transportation agencies, agencies can implement mitigation projects that satisfy a larger suite of mitigation needs, share costs, and bundle mitigation with larger and more connected conservation outcomes. Similarly, the guidelines should include a more clearly defined process and resources for engaging the conservation community and incorporating conservation plans and priorities into mitigation planning and the program. This proactive approach is really a best practice that's been employed in programs throughout the state and the country. It also helps build support for the program and resulting mitigation investments. Caltrans can leverage existing conservation science planning and partnerships, and they don't need to do this themselves. Second, Caltrans should develop the guidelines to reflect best practices for integrated planning, science, stakeholder, and sector involvement. There's been a lot of work that's been done on this, and the development of partnerships, the meaningful engagement, the science methods, the approaches, and working together, that's when we have really seen the benefits to achieve these dual goals. There's been a lot of research funded by Caltrans. There have been white papers developed. Federal Highways Ecological Program really supports this. And as written, I think the draft guidelines don't reflect those best practices. So Caltrans should convene a group of stakeholder advisors who can advise on program development, integrated planning techniques and models, performance metrics and implementation, and provide a base of support for the program. Third, the guidelines should include details on funding mechanisms and strategies to ensure that the Advanced Mitigation Fund is managed so that the investment through SB1 operates as a self-sustaining revolving fund, unleashing investment in advanced mitigation projects, and leveraging other sources of funding, including conservation funding, for more meaningful conservation outcomes and project efficiencies. While Caltrans states that the details of the fund are under development, there are a number of existing resources that Caltrans could leverage to help guide fund development. It's really important to get that part right. So 2 more comments. Fourth, Caltrans should move quickly to identify pilot projects with regional transportation agencies that are interested in and have near-term opportunities to invest in advanced mitigation. Caltrans should strive for simplicity and efficiency in the program and look for current opportunities, and that's really how you learn. So we recommend Caltrans work with transportation agencies that are currently engaged in advanced mitigation or are pursuing advanced mitigation opportunities to jumpstart the process and engage in pilots that represent regional opportunities. One example is here in the Bay Area. The MTC has been working with the Coastal Conservancy for the past 3 years to develop a 9-county regional advanced mitigation program. There are 2 pilots, one in Santa Clara County and one in the East Bay representing Alameda and Contra Costa counties. There's been joint planning, integration, transportation assessments, conservation assessments, and studies that point to near-term mitigation opportunities. And so we recommend that places like the Bay Area and other places that are interested can engage now to help look at those near-term opportunities. So the 5th and final point is that the guidelines should include an executive summary that clearly defines the program's goals, outcomes, stakeholders, and process to establish a vision for the program. We also recommend that the guidelines be written with a more lay audience in mind, so that advanced mitigation practitioners, agency staff, stakeholders, and others can easily understand and participate in the program. In conclusion, we at the Nature Conservancy are hopeful that the advanced mitigation program will deliver on the dual goals of project delivery efficiencies and effective conservation outcomes through integrated mitigation planning and implementation based on science, collaboration, and partnerships. We look forward to continuing with Caltrans, the CTC, and others to help achieve these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Also, I believe you had a prepared statement, right?
Yeah, I'll submit it tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. So this is an action item. Do we have a motion?
I'll move support for the letter, but conditioned on taking a look at the Nature Conservancy's comments to see if there's anything we might want to use from that. And thank you very much, Mr. Medaffer. I'm particularly persuaded that we have mitigation banks that are successful, and we should be following the successes and the lessons learned from the ones that have already been developed. So if that's the motion.
That was a long motion. Hopefully we got it down, but we have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Medaffer. Is there further discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Hart.
So, is there an effort to make a connection between the mitigation and the projects so that there's some rationale as to why particular parcels are chosen? It seems like sometimes the mitigation is there's just not a lot of connection, and you kind of shake your head wondering what's ever going to be used, what is that piece of land ever going to be used for,
Right.
or how can it be best used by the public? So I do have a question about how that will be approached.
I don't know if Caltrans wants to add to the discussion.
Sure. Hi, Amy Bailey from Caltrans Environmental Division. Yes, that is the intent, that the expenditures from this program are informed by a forecast of project anticipated impacts, and so that we can make sure that what we're investing in terms of the advanced mitigation project scope and what is ultimately built in terms of a credit or a value would have a geographic area that you could attribute that credit to future projects. So the forecasting model that we're hoping to use would try to make that connection with the future projects that could utilize the credits.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to item 19. Garth? I'm sorry, it's Robert.
You're on 18.
Oh, I did, I'm sorry, I did a check mark, so. Hey, nothing personal, Commissioner Medaffer, road charge. I knew it was Garth's item. I
Don't
just have the
forget road
wrong
charge.
number.
Commissioners, it's been a while since staff has spoken to you to give you an update on road charge, and we just wanted to take that opportunity today to do so. First off, we did want to inform you that Nikki Caldra, who is the telecommunications representative on the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, has taken another job assignment and is unable to fulfill her responsibilities on the Road Charge TAC. So commission staff is currently searching for possible replacements for a telecommunications representative on the Road Charge TAC. During this process, we will be consulting with both the commission chair and also the secretary of the California Transportation State Transportation Agency during that process. As Susan did mention, our next Road Charge TAC meeting is on September 7th at LA Metro, and we will be reviewing the recommendations for the Commission's annual report in regards to road charge at that particular TAC meeting. Will be for your consideration at our October meeting, our October Commission meeting. And that concludes my report.
Any comments? No comments. Okay, now I will try to move us on to item 19. Robert.
Thank you. Tab 19 is an information item to provide an update of SB1 activities. The memorandum outlines various topics for today's meeting. I also want to note important SB1 activities since the last commission meeting. Commission staff has provided training to over 100 active transportation program application reviewers. Active transportation project applications were due July 31st, 2018. We don't have a number for you yet. Staff's still assessing the total applications received. Commission staff held 2 workshops to solicit feedback on the draft 2019 reporting guidelines for the Local Streets and Roads program and provided training to cities and counties on Local Streets and Roads program reporting. Staff anticipates holding additional reporting tool trainings in August and September. Commission staff held 2 workshops to develop guidelines for the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans. The workshops were held in Sacramento and Los Angeles with the goal of gathering stakeholder feedback. Initial draft guidelines were released for public review August 13th, with comments due the week of August 27th. Staff anticipates issuing final draft guidelines and holding next round stakeholder workshops in September. Final guidelines are anticipated to be presented to the Commission for consideration of adoption at the December 2018 Commission meeting. And finally, as noted earlier, Commission staff notified 2019 Active Transportation Program applicants that if they experienced a delay in submitting applications due to the fires, there would be an extension of 15 days through August 15th. That concludes my update. Any questions?
Do we have any questions for Robert? Okay, hearing none, I am going to yield the floor to Vice Chair Arp as I need to recuse myself on item 20 as I am a trustee at the University of Redlands, and Rail to Redlands project is on there. So,
Before you leave, though, do we want to try to group up any of these other ones that are you going to be coming back and forth? I mean, can we do that, or let's try doing that so that
Okay.
Chair Inman doesn't have to coming in and out she has a few other items. So we'll start with item number.
okay.
Do you want to explain why you can't do the other items?
Yes, sorry guys, but we have some cleanup stuff we're doing. So I need to recuse myself from item 45 as my employer.
Chairman, actually, I don't believe the Redlands Rail project is subject to any changes with tab 20. So,
But it was listed on there, so I don't, I mean, I think it was just noted
Okay.
out of the abundance of caution. I
Absolutely.
am stepping aside because I don't want any delay to be related to my volunteer work. So, item 45, I need to recuse myself as my employer has holdings in the area. The same for item 52 is a Rail to Redlands, my volunteer work. Item 53, I recuse myself because of my employer has holdings, and item 55 is the Redlands passenger to rail, my volunteer work. So with that, I will be outside.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take up item number 20. Yeah.
all right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tab 20 is an action item to amend the 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program of Projects. The 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program is funded by $100 million annually in state funds authorized by Senate Bill 1, appropriated funds from the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account for fiscal years 17-18 and 2018-19. This amendment will add one new project and amend programmed funding for two other projects. Specifically, one agency is requesting to replace $8.2 million of their formulaic shares from one project and replace it with a new project, and one agency is requesting to unprogram $9,470,000 of their formulaic shares to be made available for a future project nomination. Therefore, this amendment will bring the 2018 Local Partnership Formulaic Program of Projects total to $185.3 million and a new total of 68 projects. The remaining $14.7 million in formulaic shares is expected to be programmed by the remaining eligible agencies by June 2019, which is the end of this current cycle. This item is consistent with local partnership program guidelines and the adopted formulaic program. Therefore, staff recommends your approval of tab 20 as presented in the staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, and a second was over here somewhere. Okay, Yvonne Burke. Any questions? How many, do I hear an aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. We will move now to the three consent calendar items. So how do you want to handle that?
Actually, can I just make a motion to move the consent items?
Second.
That Chair Inman has a recusal?
You can, as far as I'm concerned.
The three that she's recused.
Be 45, 52, and 53.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Alvarado and a second by Commissioner Jim Medaffer. Commissioner Jim, I like that actually. Any questions on those? Can I hear a vote?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 55.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. Item 55 is an action item. This is the final EIR, including Addendum 6 for the Redlands Passenger Rail Project in San Bernardino County. The final EIR determined that impacts related to noise and flooding would be significant and unavoidable. The San Bernardino County Transportation Commission adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends the Commission accept the final EIR, including Addendum 6, the findings of significant impact, and the statement of overriding considerations, and approve the project for future consideration of funding. Staff recommends your approval.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti and a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Any questions? Any comment? Okay, we're done. Is she going to bring cookies, or did she get this for free, or what? Does she get?
79, Jim. You do 79.
Oh, well, those are tomorrow, aren't they?
Oh, okay.
Oh, you want to do them now?
Want to kick her out tomorrow?
She doesn't need, you could take it now if you want. The item we would take is 98.
Oh,
98.
She's
the other
back.
one's the info.
well,
I'm back. We'll recuse her tomorrow. We'll kick you out
yeah,
tomorrow.
she's got more tomorrow. We'll just kick her out again tomorrow. No, we haven't got to the hearing yet. Hearing's coming up,
Okay,
yeah. More or
let's
less.
see. I'm guessing we're on item 21, but since one would never know, I have an MBA in finance, given my ability to get the numbers mixed up here. We'll see. Item 21, Alicia?
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Item 21 is an action item to adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 Local Streets and Roads Subsequent Report of Eligible Cities and Counties, and direct staff to transmit this report to the State Controller as indicated in Attachment B. Pursuant to Streets and Highways Code Section 2034, it is the Commission's responsibility to report the eligible jurisdictions to the State Controller each fiscal year for funding. The commission adopted the initial report of eligibility at the June 2018 meeting, which deemed 507 cities and counties eligible to receive fiscal year 2018-19 funding. At that time, 32 jurisdictions were pending eligibility. Staff worked with each of these jurisdictions to try and obtain any of the outstanding documentation and proposed project lists for eligibility prior to the August 1 commission deadline. There were 31 jurisdictions who met all eligibility requirements prior to the August 1 deadline and prior to commission action today. The only jurisdiction that did not meet the eligibility requirements and chose to forego their funding for fiscal year 2018-19 was the city of Fort Jones. As a result, and pursuant to section 2034C, the city's apportionments will be redistributed to all other eligible cities and counties for the fiscal year. We would like to recommend that the commission adopt the subsequent report as indicated in attachment B of this document and highlight that we were able to obtain 538 jurisdictions for eligibility in this cycle. In the first cycle of the program, we had 537.
I would like to move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Van Konynenberg, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion?
I'd just like to commend staff for really working hard with all these small jurisdictions. It was a lot of effort to do outreach, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I have just one question on the one city that couldn't. So we've tried everything and we just...
Yes, we've made every attempt, and we did receive official word from their regional representative letting us know that they would not be able to obtain funding in this cycle.
So they don't have a big brother or big sister agency that can lend them a hand? We need to see, because I do know some of these jurisdictions have challenge with turnover and everything. So
I don't believe it was that.
It's
I
not
believe
that?
it has
Okay.
to do with other requirements that are not directly related to that of the
Okay.
reporting to the commission.
Okay, great. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, believe it or not, it is the 2 p.m. hearing, so the clock just says it's a little different time. So, Alicia, public hearing.
Thank you. The purpose of this hearing is to obtain final public comment on the 2019 Local Streets and Roads Funding Program Reporting Guidelines prior to adoption. The proposed 2019 program reporting guidelines are included as an attachment to tab 23. It is the purpose of these guidelines to outline the general policies and procedures for the cities and counties to carry out their annual reporting requirements as a part of the program. In an effort to promote program-related transparency and accountability as indicated by the legislative intent of SB 1, it is the responsibility of the Commission to review, adopt, transmit, and publish the required program reports that are collected by the Commission annually. The proposed 2019 program guidelines were circulated to program stakeholders for review and comment on July 13th. Staff then hosted 5 webinars over July 24th through the 27th for a presentation of these proposed guidelines and to encourage stakeholder discussion. We are happy to state that over 360 jurisdictions were represented at these 5 webinars, including multiple regional and metropolitan partners. Commission staff worked collaboratively with the cities and counties as well as representatives from California Walks, the League of California Cities, California State Association of Counties, the State Controller's Office, regional transportation planning agencies, and metropolitan planning organizations to address and incorporate all comments received into the proposed 2019 Local Streets and Roads Funding Program reporting guidelines when and where feasible. The guidelines were last updated for this program and adopted at the March 2018 meeting. Since that meeting, a number of updates regarding statute, program reporting criteria, intent, and actual processes have been made to ensure a streamlined reporting process and to improve our transparency and accountability methods. Some notable updates for the commissioners. Pardon me. A statutory change to 2034, now allowing cities and counties to use or to designate future fiscal year program apportionments for reimbursement prior to receipt. In summary, this means that they can designate what they anticipate to receive out of a future fiscal year and use other source funding to advance a project's activity and then reimburse from those funds once they've received it. We've also included language to clarify the adopted resolution and project list detail that is included when we are receiving documents for eligibility. This is done to provide greater transparency in regards to the proposed intended use of the program funds by each of the jurisdictions. We added language to encourage jurisdictions to share their proposed project list submittals with their regional agencies and metropolitan organizations in an effort to improve regional planning efforts. We also identified the defined reporting periods for the annual project expenditure report for apportionment of funds received and actual expenditure of funds within the fiscal year. But the biggest update to the guidelines at this point is actually the removal of appendices A and B to create a standalone reference document that we've titled the Online Reporting Tool Instructions. This is a detailed document that is providing additional information regarding all reporting requirements and detailed criteria that each and every jurisdiction is expected to reference and to abide by in their reporting efforts. It is available on the Commission's program website and referenced within the guidelines themselves. Staff is confident that the guidelines before you today represent a general consensus of the local streets and roads funding program stakeholders, and that these proposed guidelines continue the program's emphasis on stakeholder inclusiveness and continuous improvement. Before we open the hearing for public comment, I would like to thank all of the other program stakeholders and commission staff who assisted in the development and review of these program guidelines, as their input was vital. Specifically, I would like to thank Kiana Valentine with the California State Association of Counties, Derek Dolphy and Ronald Verdugo with the League of California Cities, the State Controller's Office Division of Audits and Bureau of Payments, respectively, for their time, expertise, and insight in the development of the proposed guidelines before you today. To date, no formal comments regarding the proposed 2019 program guidelines have been received for inclusion in the hearing documents. At this time, staff would like to recommend opening the hearing for public comment or answer any questions from the Commission.
Okay, do we have any public comment? We haven't received any indications, so kind of last call if there's any public comment. How about from my fellow commissioners? Any comments? Okay, that was an information item, right? Does not require
Yes.
action. Thank you very much. We will move on to item 23.
Commissioners, this is an action item to adopt the 2019 Local Streets and Roads Funding Program Reporting Guidelines. The proposed 2019 guidelines are included as attachment B to this item. Staff would like to add something to note for the commissioners, in that the online annual project expenditure reporting tool will be finalized upon adoption of these guidelines and released to the cities and counties for use no later than September 1st, 2018. At this time, staff would like to recommend that the guidelines are adopted.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, a second by Commissioner Medeffer. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries.
Chair,
Mitch?
if I can, real quick, I just want to recognize Alicia for all the hard work she's done. Developing program guidelines is a full-time job, and putting together the list of eligible cities, reviewing their submittals, working with them, working with the smaller jurisdictions is a full-time job. And Alicia's gotten both of those done and on time and done a great job. So I really want to thank her for her effort. And we have a student assistant who is helping her, Alika Changazi. And so I really want to thank them both for their help.
Thank you, Alicia. Good job. Good job. So, okay, we're going to move on to Lori and item 24.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 24 is an action item to amend the 2017 Active Transportation Program Augmentation, California Conservation Corps, and Local Community Conservation Corps Program of Projects to include 3 new projects and approve the substitution list. The program of projects adopted by the Commission at the June 2018 meeting included 34 projects recommended for funding for 2 years of programming for fiscal years 17-18 and 18-19. The California Conservation Corps has submitted 3 additional projects for adoption into the program for fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19 that total $374,738, and 1 project on the substitution list. The proposed program amendment is included in your book item as Attachment B, and the substitution list is included as Attachment C. The staff recommendations are consistent with the ATP program goals and the competitive selection criteria as set forth in the guidelines adopted by the Commission on March 21st, 2018. With this recommendation, a total of $8 million will be programmed for 37 projects. Of this, 24 projects will benefit disadvantaged communities, and 19 projects will go to Certified Local Community Conservation Corps. Staff recommends that the Commission amend the 2017 Active Transportation Program Augmentation, California Conservation Corps, and Certified Local Community Conservation Corps program as shown in the book item.
We have a motion by Commissioner Medapher, a second by Commissioner Burke. Any discussion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Item 25, Lori?
Yes. Commissioners, this is an action item to adopt the 2019 Active Transportation Program Regional Guidelines for use in administering the Metropolitan Planning Organization competitive selection process for the following large MPOs that participate in the MPO component of the ATP. That is Fresno Council of Governments, Sacramento Area Council of Governments, San Diego Association of Governments, Southern California Association of Governments, Tahoe Metropolitan Planning Organization, and Tulare County Association of Governments. SB 99 allows the Commission to adopt guidelines proposed by MPOs for administering their MPO competitive component of the ATP. The MPO guidelines must be consistent with the state guidelines, but they are allowed discretion in certain areas such as project selection and weighting. Briefly, I will present a few examples from the MPO guidelines. Fresno COGS guidelines only differ from the state guidelines in that they don't require a minimum award request. State COGS guidelines add an evaluation criteria for how the project complements local economic prosperity strategies and goals. SANDAG's guidelines establishes different scoring criteria and different scoring and weighting systems for infrastructure and non-infrastructure projects for demand analysis, alignment with active transportation program objectives, comprehensiveness and greenhouse gas emission reductions, methodology, community support, evaluation, innovation, public health, matching funds, and cost effectiveness. SCAG's guidelines allow county transportation commissions to prioritize implementation projects by adding up to 20 points on a 120-point scale to supplement the state-provided base scores. Tahoe's guidelines require a minimum project size as 50,000 rather than 250,000, and Tulare's guidelines allow for bonus points for projects which are in the Measure R expenditure plan and were previously funded under the Transportation Enhancement Program. The Commission adopted 2019 Active Transportation Program regional guidelines proposed by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission at the May 2018 Commission meeting. The Kern Council of Governments, the Stanislaus Council of Governments, and the San Joaquin Council of Governments do not propose regional-specific 2019 Active Transportation Program guidelines. Commission staff reviewed all 6 MPO's guidelines and found them consistent with the statewide guidelines. Commissioners, I would like to note that there are 2 letters that you should have received as yellow items that are attached to this item. However, both these letters actually address the regional disadvantaged communities guidelines that were included in the statewide ATP guidelines. And those were adopted at the May meeting, and not these MPO guidelines. I can address any questions on that if you would like, but this issue is more for our upcoming evaluation and for the next guidelines. Staff would like to thank the ATP staff at all the MPOs for submitting the regional guidelines on time and always working closely with Commission staff on administering the regional programs. With that, staff recommends your approval of Fresno Council of Governments, Sacramento Area Council of Governments, San Diego Association of Governments, Southern California Association of Governments, Tahoe Metropolitan Planning Organization, and Tulare County Association of Governments 2019 ATP guidelines.
We have a motion by Commissioner Burke and a second by Commissioner Dunn, I believe. Any discussion on this? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, I've got a big bar on my agenda that says this would be a really nice time for a bio break. So we will take a 12-minute break. Does that sound fair? And we'll get back to work just after